These are the thoughts of a dying girl as the sirens take her away. I deserve it. Someone who looks like me should have never fallen for someone as beautiful as you. It hurts. I can't breathe. Make it stop. Just let me die. The EMT's voice telling her to hang on and that they were almost there slowly faded. And this girl was fine with it because nothing good happened when she was alive. She prayed to God that in the next life she'd be more beautiful. Yumiko Koda woke up to her parents calling her name, feeling relieved that she survived, but not expecting her to ask them who they were. This girl didn't know a girl named Yumiko, much less these people she'd never seen before. Apparently, Yumiko had tried a self-end attempt, but she had no idea why she'd do that. She asked for a mirror, but the parents didn't keep any, since Yumiko hated mirrors. So, the mother handed over her phone. I'm so beautiful. As usual, Yumiko basked in her beauty while telling the woman that she went out to get something to eat. The woman said Yumiko had always been a hungry little girl. Yumiko used to drop by all the time when she was little, and she loved the granny's homemade ohagi sweets. But Yumiko's mother berated the woman for making her daughter gain weight. Due to that, Yumiko stopped visiting. Ever since then, she wouldn't even look at the woman when they passed each other on the street. The granny had always wanted to apologize, but Yumiko told her not to worry. She then thanked the old lady for everything. Yumiko was happy to know she had good memories too. Today, she was able to learn a bit about her past relationships, and if she could learn more, she might be able to find clues to her case. If she couldn't remember, she'd research it herself. When a dog came up to her, she assumed the dog recognized her, but it was only interested in her snacks. Alright, another episode in the books. You know, I at first thought this was going to be a typical shoujo, but the twist being the male lead would fall in love with some plus-sized girl. The thing that's keeping me hanging on though is the murder mystery. I want to know who tried to kill Yumiko. Subscribe to keep up with next week's part, but for now, watch this next video. It's me, ComfyTea. I'll see you all in the next one.